back. Now I have a guest in the house, someone who I sort of kicked off this show. He anchored the show for about 3-4 years or more, actually. Chude Jideonwo, Executive Director of the Future Project, the Future Awards, the Future everything.
The future.
Great to be here. How's it going?
Fine, thank you. I like this set. I love it.
Do you miss it?
But I don't miss
Please keep missing it outside.
Don't come back inside.
I'll allow you to come back once in a while if you are nice enough. Now, we've been hearing a lot of news about something happening in Ekiti State, and your name keeps coming up. What is that about?
It's the Ekiti State of Affairs. It's the Nigeria Symposium for Young and Emerging Leaders, something the Future Awards is presenting for the 2nd year. And it's hosted by it's not just holding in Ekiti State, but it's hosted by the Ekiti State government, of course, with support from First Bank and the Office of Nigeria. That's what it's about. The symposium is basically, so the Future Awards will be 8 years old this year.
Oh wow!
Really? Yeah, 2006.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, and so so what we do is that we celebrate the best young Nigerians, and it's a platform for people to expand their goals and their visions and inspire other young people. So that's ongoing. However, we thought our society is evolving, democracy is deepening, and there is a new generation that's going to take over. So apart from celebrating them and inspiring others, how about also building their capacity for governance? Because no matter how much entrepreneurship is happening or leadership, if it doesn't connect with governance at some point, then the nation won't change. And so the Future Awards thought the next level will be to build the capacity of young leaders who are going to be in governance, and that's what the symposium is about. Okay.
Now, you've spoken plenty English. I imagine I'm some 19-year-old who just switched over from a music channel, and I'm like, what is this guy blabbing about? Well, in simple terms, why should I be interested in music?
Because, so this is the thing. So everybody complains about Nigeria.
Yeah.
But what we don't understand is that people have been complaining about Nigeria since we gained independence. The leadership question, if you're talking about Achebe, who inspired the symposium, essentially, 1983 he was talking about the same problems that we were talking about in 2013, which is, 20-30 years after. So what is the problem? And many people have looked at the problem is this, problem is that, but everybody seems to have centered, Achebe himself centered the question of leadership. The fact that people are not ready to lead, people don't have the capacity to lead. Now, something that has occurred from generation to generation is where everybody seems to think that they can lead, but nobody seems to be equipped. So we have accidental presidents, accidental governors, accidental ministers, people who are not ready to lead, as it were. And so we're thinking that to make sure that mistake doesn't occur again, we need to have a practical, direct session where young people who are going to be in leadership and the older people who are already in leadership can interact honestly about the problems that we are having. What happens when you enter government and you so-called lose your head, or you suddenly begin to speak in tongues that men cannot understand, or etc. What exactly goes on, and how can this generation avoid the mistakes that the other generation has made? Now, in doing that, you need to learn from all sides, from people in the political parties, from people in government, from people in the media, from people. So this symposium gets all of them together, gets some of the brightest of young leaders, in political parties, NGOs, etc. And say, look, let's talk. Let us understand exactly what's happening in government so that we do not repeat the same mistakes. Because, I was talking to Ikogosi with last year, Ikogosi, the writer, and said, we are not intrinsically better than the generation before us. It's not as if we were born and then we were anointed and said, go and do exploits. Essentially, we're in the same Nigeria facing the same problems. So we might end up like the people before us. How do we or we are already even on the main road. How do we ensure that we are not and that we do better? That's the essence of the symposium.
Now, I looked at the name of some of the speakers who are going to be there. Why should I be interested in listening to President Obasanjo, for example? Someone who, like, the average young person thinks is one of the biggest problems we had in this country. Why should I be interested in this?
It's interesting. I'm not a fan of President Obasanjo. I'm a documented non-fan of President Obasanjo, but then he has led this country 3 times. And certainly, whether you are learning from his victories or from his mistakes, you have a lot to learn from a man who has been in that seat. The failure, the hubris that imagines that we will suddenly have the capacity to lead without either understanding the problems or the solutions to those problems is what I suspect has led many of our fathers to fail. The idea that somehow, magically, when you just are born, there's no society that develops like that. Even in America, which we admire so much, even after Tony Blair and all the accusations about Iraq and etc., there are still institutional knowledge-sharing mechanisms in Britain and outside that ensure that a new generation learns the lesson from this generation. Speaking of which, Obasanjo came back into government, met President Obasanjo, at the nexus of moving from military to democracy. He helped. You can debate the substance of it, but he helped to establish the democracy that we have now. He helped to build a lot of the structures that we have now, the INEC we have now, many of the economic foundations that we have now. Certainly, a man like that who is familiar with constructing a modern society has a lot. And more importantly, he's not just speaking. So that's the point that we must not fail to emphasize. He's listening and he's answering questions. He does have a lot. Not, I always say, not in a confrontational way. We are not, it's not, there's a place for Luther and then there's a place for, what can we learn? And this is important. We're insistent that the new generation of young leaders must build their capacity. And nobody's going to teach us how government in Nigeria works, apart from those who have worked in government in Nigeria.
I was at a seminar some time ago, I think it was last year, somewhere in Addis Ababa. I remember having some sort of not a confrontation, but I had a talk with a minister in government right now, and it was something along the lines of, you're too young to know how government works, and when you are bigger and older, you will be able to get into certain places, something along those lines. Now, what is the guarantee that these people you're calling to come and speak to these young people will be honest enough to say the truth and actually tell us their mistakes and admit those mistakes?
What's the guarantee that when we come to Channels Television and talk about this topic, NEPA will not take light? But we come to Channels Television anyway. Look, it's like an article I wrote. I just finished a series called New Leadership that ended yesterday. And the last thing I said was, look, we have a responsibility. You cannot find out if a car is working or not unless you drive it. And you keep driving it. And if it stops on the road, you take it to the mechanic. If the mechanic is silly, you take it to another mechanic. If that mechanic fails, you move it to the person that manufactured it. We have a responsibility to keep testing this democracy until it works the way we desire. The day that we give up on that, and it is legitimate for us to say we are tired, we are fed up, we are angry. An article I wrote this week said, let us not get it twisted, anger is good. Anger is legitimate. Then what? So we can be angry, and there's nobody, let's say people think that they have a monopoly of anger. There's nobody angrier than an entrepreneur in Nigeria, a young entrepreneur who is taxed 6 times and doesn't have the government giving me any kind of tangible support, not even electricity. So I'm as angry as the next person. But then after the anger ends, what next? So I have no guarantees, and I will not give anybody any guarantees. It's my country as much as it is theirs. I have no guarantees that if I see President Olusegun Obasanjo, the man is almost 80, has been president 3 times and just launched his foundation in London, and I'm honored to have him as my guest. I don't have any guarantees that if I sit him on a chair, he's going to give me the answers I want. I have the guarantee that he will be there, and I have the guarantee that I will ask him questions. And that if he feels a certain responsibility towards the next generation, he will answer those questions. All organizations like ours can do is facilitate those sessions where this part and this part can rub minds. Speaking of which, we cannot be, one of the things that Chebe said is, one of the problems our leadership has is a lack of clarity and lack of honesty. I cannot come here and be saying, we are assured. You can't assure. There are no assurances to the democracy. That, in fact, is the nature of democracy. It's a testing, it's a working. So, we are calling these young leaders, and these are not spring chickens, these are people from the PDP, CPC, ACN, Lagos State government, Ekiti government, federal government, journalists, yourself, you are moderating the sessions. We are asking them to come. There are no holds barred. There are no rules of engagement. All we say is interact. And I'm hopeful that it is impossible for, anybody who has met President Obasanjo knows that it is impossible for you to challenge him and he will not respond to you. And those sessions are important, more so because they are youth-led. The reason why that minister, God help him that he has not met me, could say that in Addis Ababa is because he's not the one that called him. So he really thinks he doesn't have a responsibility, But however, this is a youth-led initiative where the young people themselves are making this request. That is a significant difference.
Interesting. Why Ekiti State?
God bless Governor Kayode. He
said that with a smile.
Because these things are difficult. These things are difficult to manage, and they are not Nyemego or Zubo matters, Governor Kayode was at last year's symposium as a guest, and he was very impressed by the level of engagement. I don't know if you were not there last year.
I wasn't.
But there were honest exchanges. Governor Rotimi Amechi accused me of trying to position myself to join the chopping, and Axina Mohammed challenged him and said, look, if you're not ready to answer our question, get off the stage. And Governor Rotimi is going to be back this year, so he wasn't discouraged. So after watching that session, Governor Fayemi thought this is a conversation that needs to continue, and needs to continue outside of Lagos. We need to go around the country, we need to talk to more young people, we need to engage with more people at the local levels and at the state level. So he said he would want his state to manage, and we're so delighted for his support. Of course, him alone cannot do it. So we have our sponsors, Enough is Enough Nigeria, First Bank, Etisalat. But he was excited by the quality of the conversation and the honesty. So this time around, for instance, we're not having cameras, recording the conversations. We want it to be as frank as possible. And he thought, it was important for his state to lead that charge after Lagos. So
interesting. So,
and of course, there's the Ikogosi.
Yes,
the governor is also a smart businessman.
He's trying to plug in his new,
which is great, which is the way it's supposed to be. The Ikogosi Warm Springs, one of our tourist attractions in Nigeria, which he has revived. And he doesn't want to just talk about it or show you adverts. He wants you, as he calls us Twitter people, to come and see for ourselves, the work that he has done. So we're going to see it when we go next week.
Very interesting. Okay, you've talked about your partners and all of that. How does this tie into the future awards and the future projects and all of that? Is there a link with the awards?
Well, to the extent that
you have?
Every year the future awards has 3 goals: inspiring leadership and building enterprise, the major goals. But we also think that we need to have active citizens. So every year, the future was not the only thing we do. In January, you had the National Enterprise Conference, trying to equip young entrepreneurs and young people who are coming out of school. So every time, we're trying to tackle all the problems that we see as they affect young people and as we have the resources too. So to that extent, this is part of the season. So every year, it's a season from January to December of activities aimed at empowering young people, equipping us, whether it's through enterprise or through leadership. So to that extent, this is one of a chain. So we say the enterprise conferences are to equip people to, because it's not just to be talking about government. We also have to have work, like people say handwork. We need to be adding value to the Nigerian enterprise. So that's what the enterprise conferences do. The awards help us maintain hope, because everything else that happens, the one thing that we cannot lose is hope. And to show that there are many young people who are surviving in Nigeria in spite of the challenges is very crucial. That's where we started from. That's important. This one, however, is to say, while we are trying to establish hope, we have immediate problems of government, of governance. How do we engage those problems? That is what. So every time we see a social problem as it concerns young people, we try to develop a program through the future that targets that particular problem.
Okay, how did you get people, who's participating in this? Did you do like a registration, or is registration still open? Did you invite people, or is it just your friends?
Well, I won't invite I won't not invite my friends. Okay. So friends and enemies are welcome. Well, first we have had a bias towards Ekiti indigents, obviously. Okay. So we're going to have people from Ekiti who have registered, but then the registrations were thrown open. Okay. They ended on the last week, but we had 500% of our subscriptions. So and people are coming from Lagos, from Kanu, from ETC. So we threw open registrations, and we also handpicked certain young people that represent certain sectors to be there. And then it's not just President Obasanjo who is speaking, of course. There are all these other people. But even then, they are the younger people. So we have the Why Niger political writers and the Why Niger front page writers, people from the CPC, from the APC, and then people from...
which of the APCs now?
Well, APC 1, APC 2, but not APC 3. So we have people from CPC, ACN coming in, from APGA, all the political parties, and young people, young journalists, flamethrowers like Japhet Omojua and ETC coming to ask important questions and have important conversations. And it's all focused on 2015. So, it's amazing to me that there are not a lot of activities, that are... I mean, it's 2 years to 2015. It's 2 years to one of the most important elections.
So people think it's too early. It's
incredible that anybody thinks it's too early, especially since, politicking has already started. People are already splitting. They're already forming governors' forums, trade union, governors' forum, PDP. So the
governors' forum, you're on vacation.
Governors' forum, London branch. Governors' forum, my dad and Roosevelt branch. So, the politicians are working hard to dictate the terms of the next elections. How dare us citizens be sleeping easy when it's our election, it's our country. And we can complain from today to tomorrow. You can complain and say, why are you inviting Obasanjo? Go and invite the woman selling tatashe in the market. But it's your country as well as it is mine, as well as the young people in political, as well as anybody else. We need to start taking charge of the process and of the narrative leading to 2015, and we're already late.
Anybody in government now who's going to be a part of the symposium?
Oh, of course. We have, in fact, there's a Nigerian Governors Forum that's going to be happening at that event. We have a mix of governors. We have Governor Rotimi Amechi, we have Governor Kayode Fayemi, we have Governor Adams Oshiomhole, we have Governor Emmanuel Oduaha, and we have Governor Olusegun Mimiko. So there's a spread.
Okay.
We have Honorable Abdul Mumini, Chairman of the House Committee on Finance,
Okay.
who is he's in the nexus between young and so he's
and
there.
to this man.
So he's there. We have the Honorable Minister for Sports, and Madam Bolaji Abdullahi. Of course, we have the keynote speaker, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is the coordinating minister of the economy, and who we accepted this invitation. So we have people from government. We have yesterday's men, today's men, and then tomorrow's men. And of course, we have Malam Nasir El-Rufai, who is going to be there talking to the young people.
Okay.
Hopefully, we're asking questions about it.
It would be nice to see El-Rufai with a lot of these
With
people
the other
and
people.
how
It'll be interesting
the
to
dynamic
see.
works. How long is this going to be for?
It's from the 5th
Okay.
to the 7th of
3 whole days of
3 whole days, yes, and it's 3 full days. So the first day we're spending the day, talking to the people of the government of Ekiti. So it's like a live class, talking about that particular government, how it works. The next day, sessions from morning till night. Actually, we're also having a professional section where we have, I think, the MD of First Bank, who is very passionate about young people, and the MD of Sahara Group, Toyeko. So it's also, as you're a young professional, you're not in government, how do you participate? And so it's a full weekend, and that's part of why we're excited, and we are praying for Governor Fayemi, because we thought it's not just to come to a seminar, they were all rushing to go back home in Lagos traffic or Abuja traffic or whatever. It's be able to sit down and have an exhaustive conversation. We're also launching, Why Nigeria, it's also launching something targeted at the 2015 elections at that event. So there's also an outcome.
Starting a party?
Well, we will announce it, at that event. You will find out on Sunday. Because we know how to complain. And, somebody has called us children of anger. And I've said that it is better to be children of anger than to be children of apathy. So we are angry, and we should be. But then more than that,
translate it
we have to translate. And those of us who have access to people in government, to resources, etc., should not make the mistake of those before us and just squander that money on ourselves and our businesses. We must begin to build the kind of society that works, not because we are so selfless, but because if Nigeria works, then we have a better life. I am able to get to this place in shorter time than I spent coming here because Nigeria works. It makes my life much easier. So it's actually enlightened self-interest that we take an active interest in what's happening in 2015.
Well, I think you've explained everything very well. Before we go, congratulations, your name came up in Forbes recently.
Oh, yes.
With the Future Awards.
Yes,
yes. Something around the top 10 people under 30, football age.
Yeah. And I have to send a check to Forbes for that PR. But you know how it is, because of these things we do, people forget sometimes that basically at the heart of it, we are entrepreneurs. We're just young people in business who are interested in our country, And so it was good to have that reminder that, look, because also, even if you're interested in our country, government is not, nobody's, apart from those who are in politics or government is not our work. We still need to add value, build institutions, etc. So it was great to have Forbes mentioned.
Congrats on that. Well, thank you very much, Chude.
Thank you.
Very interesting remarks there. Ekiti State, 5th to the 7th of
Yes.
April.
Yes, it will be streamed live.
Okay, so even if I'm not there, I can watch.
You can watch because it's by registration. So if you can't watch, if you check whynigeria.com on Thursday, we will be publishing the link where, thanks to Paradigm Initiative Nigeria, you can watch the event live. Okay, whynigeria.com, don't forget, go there, and you will find all the information you need to know. Thank you very much, Chude Jideonwo. Thank you. It's good to
see you back here when I try to give you some space to talk.